what I saw at High Tech was how we value each other, how we treat each other, how we understand each other's strengths. And that's what we focus on. And so if we build trust and we build collaboration amongst educators across the island, there's nothing that we cannot do.
Good day, everyone. I'm Pauletta Francis, primary educator at Saltus Grammar School, and you are listening to the ProLearners Exchange of the National Educators Institute at Bermuda College. The ProLearners Exchange is a place for Bermuda's educators to share their powerful professional learning and networking experiences. Today, we'll chat with Mrs. Tracy Hayward, an avid learner and special projects coordinator at the Department of Education. I'd like to remind you of the two resources referenced in this interview: the Standards for Professional Learning by Learning Forward, an International Professional Learning Association. These standards describe the conditions, content, and processes for professional learning that leads to high-quality teaching and learning for educators, and are the criteria the NEI uses when designing and thinking about adult learning. Scotland's professional learning planning cycle supports our educators through the professional learning process, from thinking about its design to sharing the new learning or skill with colleagues. The learning professional cycle bolsters the professional growth and agency of educators as it prompts them to ask critical questions about their needs for learning, as well as those of their school, system, and of course, the students. These are quite helpful tools for educators to have in their education toolbox when designing their professional learning. You can read all about our special guest learning experience in the June issue of PL Matters, the NEI flagship publication found on their Facebook page indicated below. Right now, let's bring Tracy Hayward to the stage so that she can tell us even more about her journey at the amazing High Tech High Graduate School of Education. Welcome, Tracy.
Good morning, Pauletta.
Good morning, Tracy. It is so absolutely wonderful to have you here with us today. I'm going to get started by just reading a little bit of your bio. It is absolutely awesome. You have done so much. I know you, but I learned so much more about you through your bio, and I hope that our audience will too. So you've started with such a great quote by Dr. Gaudi Muhammad, and it reads, "Create space for genius, and genius will emerge." Wow, that's a mouthful. This is one of Tracy's favorite quotes because she is a true believer that every child has genius, and as educators have to create the right environment for our students' genius in order for it to grow. Tracy changed careers at the age of 27 and decided to go back to college and become a teacher because she believed that she could use her passion for teaching to make a difference in Bermuda's youth. Tracy attended Alabama Agriculture and Mechanical University in Huntsville, Alabama, to pursue her Bachelor of Education, specializing in business and office education. Upon graduating, Tracy started her teacher career over 27 years ago as a business studies teacher in the Bermuda public school system. To this day, she is very passionate about educating children. In 2012, Tracy decided to further her studies by enrolling in a program offered locally by Endicott College. 2 years later, she graduated with a master's degree in organizational management. She's definitely an ongoing learner because in 2021, she enrolled in an online principal certification course where she obtained a certificate in educational leadership from Framingham University. And most recently, in July 2022, Tracy attended the High Tech High Educational Leadership Residency program and moved to San Diego, California for 10 months. Here, she earned a master's in educational leadership. As a part of her studies in San Diego, she interned in the Lemon Grove School District in the Student Services Department. Currently, Tracy works at the Department of Education, working on special projects with a focus on implementing social emotional learning and restorative practices in the Bermuda public school system. Tracy, again, we are so happy to have the opportunity to discuss the experiences that you wrote so engagingly about in PL Matters. I have to tell you, Tracy, I read your extremely well written, passionate article, and you entitled it My Learning Journey at High Tech High Residency Program. I learned about your immersion week, where you developed a personal learning plan, you engaged in a new teacher odyssey, and of course, your fieldwork at Lemon Grove School. It is obvious that this once in a lifetime opportunity has had a great impact on you and has forever changed you professionally and personally. Would you agree with that bold statement, Tracy?
1000% agree with you. It changed my life. I have never experienced anything like it before. So again, it changed the way I think about education. It was almost a unlearning experience because it's so many things you think about education, but going over there, there's a lot of stuff I had to unlearn.
Okay, well, thank you for your opening statement. As educators, we know that planning is crucial to success. So, with that theme in mind, I'd like to start part one of our interview today with what I've called the inspiration and journey, how you actually planned your experience. So, because we are using the steps of Scotland's professional learning planning cycle, the first question is going to revolve around your planning for your professional learning. So, here's the first question. It's actually a three-part question. Set the stage for us. Please provide a brief about us overview of the program you were in. Start, first of all, was where is High Tech High Graduate School of Education? Some people might not know exactly where it is. So start there, please.
Sure. So High Tech High is actually in beautiful San Diego, California, a place where I had never been before in my life. And San Diego is in an interesting place because it's right on the border of Mexico. And so it's what I love about it. It reminded me a lot of Bermuda. The people are friendly, and it's also surrounded by water. So you're right on the coast.
Awesome. What specific goals did you set for yourself before starting your professional learning journey at High Tech High?
So before I left Bermuda to go to High Tech, I was working with Learning First, which was a team that was looking at reforming education in Bermuda. And we talked a lot about project-based learning. And Salters actually introduced me to High Tech because they actually brought in Larry Rosenstock to do a presentation at Salters about project-based learning. And I attended that workshop and I was so intrigued by his talk. I went and watched the documentary, which is called, I believe, Most Likely to Succeed. And it showed overall documentary about a child's journey through high tech. That blew my mind because I was like, okay, how does this work? And so it's one thing to read about something. It's a whole completely different thing to understand how this works. So I went onto their website and I said, I have to find out more about this because if we're moving to project-based learning in the public education system, I need to know the ins and outs and how this actually works. So I sent an email because I saw they had a graduate school and they offered an online program. And Brittany, who is the admissions officer, said, Tracy, I looked at your resume and I think you'll do an excellent job to become one of our residents. And I said, what is that? And she said, you actually can move here for a whole school year. And while you're taking your classes during the day, you'll be in high tech so you can actually live this. And I was like, wow, yes, this is what I want to do. And so it was almost the impossible because I have 3 children. One was in his last year of high school in Florida at IMG. My daughter was in Arcadia in her last year in university, and my son was here in Bermuda at Bermuda College. So it was a critical year for my children, and my children come first. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but if it's meant to happen, it will happen.
And it did happen, Tracy.
And it did.
And it absolutely did happen. So you wanted to learn more about project-based learning, going to SOTUS, being a part of the audience and watching the video. And then your curiosity kind of kicked in. And from there, what do they say next? It's history, right? And so
Yes.
it sounds like you've actually achieved the professional goal, one professional goal at least, before you started and went off to High Tech High.
Correct. Yeah.
The third question around goals is sometimes we make clear goals based on what is known at the time. But once we are in it, we consider some modifications. And I'm wondering, if this is the case, how did your goals evolve through your experience? Because one goal you had in mind and it came to fruition, but I'm sure other goals also came about. How did that happen for you?
So going there, I was already pretty much into restorative practices. I'm big advocate because I was seconded to the department to rewrite the student code of conduct. And that was one of the biggest things that I was looking at. So what is restorative practices? What does it look like in a school system? And the PBL. But when I got to High Tech, I'm ready to learn about all this stuff and bring it back to Bermuda. But guess what they said? That stuff doesn't matter. The work has to start with you. So you had to take a hard look at yourself as an educator. They talked about things about equity, about social justice, all these things. I mean, I learned and read Paul Fierre's work, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I learned about Bell Hooks, Angela Davis, all these people I had never heard or read about before, Lisa Dalpitt. And so goes back to earlier where I said I had to unlearn a lot of things that I thought I knew. But I had to first do the work with myself and say, okay, Tracy, as an educator, what are your beliefs? What do you see? How do you play a part when it comes to educating children? Do you have biases? Do you have things that hold children back? And so that was deep. And so I had to pause on all those other things that I wanted to focus on Tracy first.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. Absolutely does. So we've talked so far about planning and goal setting, and that's the first step. Step 2 of the professional learning planning cycle gets us into the meat of the ways that you engage with your spectacular, I'm going to say, professional learning. So let's talk about the actual experience. I didn't expect this to be easy for you to select, but please describe 2 key learning experience or activities that you participated in during your time abroad, which left you hungry for even more knowledge. And I must say, as I read your article, I remember it's kind of wondering which 2 you're going to choose because there are so many.
In the article, I was even limited in what I had to write because I was like, I'm going to start with the beginning part of my journey. So there was so much in my article I left out, but I'm going to pick 2. The first one is called a PBL Learning Institute. And so what High Tech High does is, because they're one of the gurus when it comes to PBL, they invite the San Diego community to join in, so other schools, to become part of a year-long PBL Learners Institute. And PBL looks at things very differently. And I love High Tech High because they make no apologies for the way they teach. They teach through projects. So we don't have the math class, the science class. They teach through projects and the subjects are integrated in the projects. And a lot of the projects are based on the social things that are going on in the community. And so they invite other schools in to look at their model. And I love them because they're an open book. And so you're working with people at High Tech who are the experts. You're working with teachers from all around San Diego that come in and become a part of this institute and look at how we can make small steps in implementing PBL in schools. So that was powerful because what I like about it is it's not a one size fits all. It's not this is the model and this is how you do it. It's about, okay, what are your school's needs at this time? What is the one thing that you can work on and that you can change at your school? And it creates a collaboration amongst educators, both high tech and not high tech educators, so that all year you're going through this continuous improvement cycle to upskill or do whatever needs to be done at your school to make PBL at your school a reality. They are not in duplicating a high tech high. It's about how can you take what you've learned here and implement it in your school environment, whatever that may be. And so I love that. I love the collaboration. I love the openness. I love the honesty. I loved working with other educators who were real and said, I can't do this. Here's what I can do. And so I loved that. And nobody was saying, yes, you have to do it, or no, you can't leave this piece out. Everything was about you doing what best fits you.
Wow. That's certainly different from what most teachers kind of do in their classroom. Would you agree with that?
Correct. And then the second experience was every year High Tech High has something called a deeper learning conference. It's usually in the last week in March. This conference brings people around the world that are presenters to deeper learning onto High Tech High's campus. And as intern, they ask you to be a pit crew, and pit crew is basically a planner. And what I loved about that is you first get all these people writing in. So as a pit crew member, your role is to one, vet the presenters and make sure that whatever they're presenting is in line with the deeper learning competencies. And then after you do that, you then actually interview them and ask them. And what I love about high tech again is they use protocols. So there's a protocol for everything that you do. And so you interview them and you ask questions. So basically, the pit crew has the say as to who is going to come and present and who isn't by voting. And so you have like 3 or 4 people looking at the same thing and you vote and you say, yes, I think they should come, and you explain why. And that's how presenters are selected. Once they're selected as a team, we then have to lay out everything. We have to make sure they have all the resources needed. They come and you basically are an ambassador during deeper learning. You have people from all over the world that come to be a part of this. And it's almost like a party atmosphere where people are so excited about learning and so excited about the workshops that it's so much enjoyment and fulfillment. And I've never experienced PD like this before. And I said, if God willing, I will be back every year for this deeper learning experience. And if so, I'm going to be a pit crew. And what they do too is they pair you with something that you're interested in. So I said I want to learn more about if it's anybody that's doing restorative practices. And I was actually paired with a team that they were rolling that out at their school. in Memphis, Tennessee, and they were so awesome. They blew my mind. And so even though I was there as a host, you still learn so much from the whole experience.
I can hear the passion in your voice. Clearly, this experience, as I said, has changed you personally and professionally. In all that you've just said, Tracy, it reminds me of the impact. I think we're heading there now. The impact of professional learning. Both Learning Forward Standards for Professional Learning and the Scotland Yard's Professional Learning Cycle regard the impact of an educator's professional learning as something educators should consider very early on in the whole planning process. In your Department of Education role, you are well aware of the strengths and challenges that we currently face in the Bermuda public school system. As you set your learning goals, what impact did you, Tracy, anticipate your learning might have on the Bermuda public school system? Or at least, in which area did you think that impact might occur?
The biggest thing that I learned, both at High Tech and Lemon Grove, is relationships. And so it doesn't matter what we learn, because in Bermuda, we have everything we need when it comes to our educators, when it comes to our professional knowledge, when it comes to everything in Bermuda, our Bermudians, we have everything we need. What I saw at High Tech was how we value each other, how we treat each other, how we understand each other's strengths. And that's what we focus on. And so if we build trust and we build collaboration amongst educators across the island, there's nothing that we cannot do. And so the things are secondary. The first, I think the most important thing is having children, right, as our focus. And what do we need to do for our children? And I'm going to go there. One thing that I did not write about, I have 2 brown boys, raising them in Bermuda. And before I left, I'll never forget this. 2 of my students, one was murdered. One was the one that murdered my student. And every time something like that happens, I think as an educator, what can I, Tracy, have done differently to make sure these boys know their value, know who they are, understand that they are so important and the world needs them. And through High Tech, every single thing we do, children are at the center, and not only at the center, they are involved. And so when we create PBL activities, the children critique it. They come over and they look at your work and say, I like this part, but this part isn't clear to me. How can you make that clearer for a child to understand? So every single thing you do at High Tech, children are involved. So those are 2 big things that I think that when we look at what we need to do, number 1 is value the expertise we have in Bermuda, in Bermudians. Mm-hmm. Because when I got to Lemon Grove, they said, I see your resume, Tracy. I already know what you can do. So we just basically went through training our teachers on restorative practices and social emotional learning. But COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So we're going back in for the first time. I need you to go and ensure that it's being implemented with fidelity. And I said, okay, so you want me to go to these schools, people I've never met before in my life, people just were introduced to me on a slide to say, Tracy Hayward's coming and here's her role. When I walked in those schools, I was welcomed with open arms. people were vulnerable to say, you know what, Tracy, here's what I can do, but here's what I'm struggling with. How can you help me in that area? So the support, we're not here to critique. We're not here to say, okay, Tracy, you don't know what you're doing. You need to sit down. No, it's Tracy, what do you need? How can I help you? Because people already come with knowledge and expertise, and we have to value that. And we have to meet everybody where they are. The same thing with children. So, as an adult, I cannot go into school and say, everybody, we're starting from scratch. Here's the PD, here's what we're doing, because everybody starts at a different place. So, everybody has to have a different way to enter. So again, it becomes collaborative and personalized. And so if we meet every educator where they are and value their expertise and their knowledge, we can go far. And that's what I've learned, and that's what I lived, and that's what I know works. And until we get to that place, we can transform education in Bermuda.
You have hit the nail on the head on so many of your comments thus far. So many. Like you said, we know so much as educators. We're well educated. We've been to the best school. We have the best PD, like that. We have all of that. So it's relationship building. It's that collaboration. And you're right. If we can get it right amongst ourselves, that's very, very powerful. I began thinking about children and how from our little youngest learners, we can begin these processes of collaboration and getting feedback and things like that. So if we start from the smallest level all the way up, our children will just soar. They'll just soar.
That's it. That's it. And again, the work doesn't have to start with the children. It has to start with us. And that's what High Tech taught me when I got there and I wanted to do all the things. They said, no, Tracy, we're not focusing on any of those things. We need to focus on Tracy first to make sure that you don't have any implicit biases. You don't have anything in your way, right? And we have to talk about this. Education in Bermuda for teachers is very traumatic. I'm speaking as a teacher. We were told in the Hopkins report that we're no good. We were told by so many reviews that we're not good teachers. And so that's trauma. So have we listened? This is another thing. We actually talked about listening, being a listening leader. What does that look like? What does that sound like? So that doesn't go in and saying, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And Pauletta, you're going to do as I say. No, that's not how we do things. We go in saying, this is a goal. This is what we want to accomplish. How are we going to get there? We sit there and we collaborate and we go as fast or as slow as we need to. But one thing that I learned, and this is another thing Bermuda needs to look at, coaching is so important. Every principal had a coach. Every instructor had a coach. And so the way they coached people, because again, if we want to transform, we have to have an environment, a culture, and a climate that is open to people taking risks. And in order for me to take a risk, I need somebody to say, I'm drawn and I need help.
And
And
like
a
you
lot
said,
of teachers are drawn.
And that comes through building a relationship with someone, a trusting,
Correct.
open relationship with someone. So you're really talking about professional dialogue. We're getting into professional dialogue, I feel, once we have a trusting collaborative relationship with someone. Other than writing for PL Matters, what opportunities have you taken to share your insight and strategies that you gained at High Tech High with your colleagues?
Sure. So upon return back to Bermuda, I was like a fish out of water. And at this juncture, I would like to thank the Commissioner of Education, Kamala Richards, who was meeting with me and said, okay, Tracy, you've gone and you have this expertise. Where do you feel you can use your expertise? And I said, I really want to work on the social emotional piece and the restorative practices piece. And so that's what my focus has been on. Again, it ties back to in 2019, I was brought to the Department of Education to implement the School Code of Conduct. And one of the things that was blaring is we need to be more restorative with children. Our children today are not the children that we were when we went to school. They are dealing with so many issues, and COVID blew that wide open. A lot of things that were hidden are now wide open. And so when I worked at schools in San Diego, when you walked around, you didn't hear any teacher raise their voice. You didn't hear any child crying, because if a child showed signs of distress, you simply said to the child, how can I help you? Or what do you need? And so you taught the children to be able to express their emotions. So, for example, if a child is angry and they're throwing things around the room and they're using F-bombs, you don't know what strategies to help them with, and that may be the only language that they know because that's what they see at home. And so they need that emotional intelligence where you teach them there's a difference between I'm frustrated and I'm furious. Because the strategy that you give them for being frustrated and what you give them for being furious are two different things. And so my work is to teach educators and adults, how do we teach children about this emotional intelligence? How to express themselves so we can help them, whatever situation that they're in. And so I've gone to speak to principals. I've gone to speak to staff meetings. I've gone all over the island at different schools assisting where I am needed. And a lot of places, what has happened is one person heard me speak and they said, okay, Tracy, they called me, said, I need you to come to my school. Or I need you to help me over here. Or I need you to help me to do this. And so that's what I've been working on. One thing that before COVID hit, we have a relationship with CURB, and I wanted CURB to come in and train every educator in the public education system on restorative practices. And I'm excited to say that we're in the process of crossing that line, and this year we're starting the process of every teacher in Bermuda public education system to be trained in restorative practices. And again, that work, though, starts with the adults, because we cannot teach restorative practices if we don't possess that ourselves. And so that is going to be some necessary but good work. Another highlight was I talked so much about San Diego. Dr. Lou Simmons, I talked to him and he says, you know what, Trace, I would really like to see what you experience. So I said, Deeper Learning's coming up in March, Doc. Are you interested? He said, yes. So I said, okay. He said, okay, I want you to help me organize a group of us to go over and do some PD. So we did customized PD where we actually went to a high-tech high school for 2 days. And we just were in the school, walked around the school, and we were able to ask questions about what we saw, what we experienced. And High Tech High has something called an exhibition of learning, and it's almost like a celebration of learning. And so it's like a fair.
Yeah.
Where every child from P1 all the way through exhibits their learning. So we were a part of that for 2 days. And then we went to the Deeper Learning Conference that taught us how to implement what we actually saw in place at the high-tech school. And as a direct result, one of my colleagues, Denise Hill, signed up to say, yes, I want the experience and I want to go to high-tech high and do my master's in educational leadership. So she started at the beginning of August. She's over there now.
Look at that. Look at that. You were the forerunner for that, Tracy. You're passing the baton on to someone else, and it's going to have a ripple effect in the Bermuda public school system. You should be really proud of that.
I am, and I'm excited for her because, again, high-tech's experience for me is different for her, where my focus was on social emotional learning and, restorative practice and PBL. Hers is something completely different. So they cater your educational master's leadership to what it is you want to focus on. So it's personalized because they don't believe in this one size fits all.
So our final question today, Tracy, is you've talked about the goals that you had when you came back. You're a future forward grower and learner and teacher. What is perhaps one future goal that you have, either for yourself or for the Bermuda public school system?
One future goal that I have is to really look at restorative practices and make it more personal. Because again, I've talked to my colleague at CURB who's implementing it, and I said it's important for teachers to get training, right? But like I did when I was in Lemon Grove, it's not good enough just to train somebody. You have to be able to go and say, okay, Pauletta, you did this. How is it going in your class? What's working? What's not working? So that we work together as a system to collaborate and ensure that things are done with fidelity. It's not good enough just to do the PD. It's the follow-up. It's the coaching. It's the collaboration. It's the personalization. And so my future goal is to follow up with the educators that have received the training, because some have already. So come September, I'm going to try to go and support, not to critique, not to say, no, you shouldn't do it like that, but to go and listen and say, how can I help? How can I support? And what do you need?
And I think they appreciate that more than anything, knowing that someone will always be there to answer their questions and to support them along the way.
Correct.
Well, Tracy, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today and for sharing with us, as you've said in your own words, I'm going to quote you here, the best educational experience of your professional life. We are very proud of you and your tremendous accomplishments. Your experience reminds me of a powerful quote by Abigail Adams, which says, learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor and attended to with diligence. Again, Tracy, thank you.
Thank you, Pauletta.
Audience, I hope that you, like us, gained inspiration from our pro learner, Tracy Hayward. To learn more about the NEI, follow us on our varied social media platforms. Find us on Facebook and YouTube at the National Educators Institute at Bermuda College, and on Instagram, of course, at National Educators Institute. We look forward to seeing you at the next ProLearners Exchange interview.